The Evolution Revolution, presented by Alec Gurevich, Barbara Zamolitskaya, Ariana Dubov, and Raquel Hussein. But as we talk about names, here are some names that you should know. Aristotle was an ancient Greek philosopher who wrote the Metaphysics. In the Metaphysics, Aristotle said, and I'm paraphrasing, every species has essential characteristics that are unalterable. This means that every animal was made as it should be. Everything was born the way it was supposed to be born, and there is neither change nor evolution. The next name you should know is Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. He said that organisms become more complex, le pouvoir de la vie, the force that perpetually tends to make order. Lamarck created the theory of acquired traits. It stated that change acquired over the course of an organism's life would be passed on to its offspring, which would then continue the cycle. Finally, we get to Darwin. Darwin created the theory of gradual equilibrium. Organisms change slowly over time. These changes would accumulate until the creature is a whole new species. Darwin's next theory is that of natural selection. It states that organisms that are different from the rest, via mutations, will either die off or survive more efficiently than other organisms of the same species. They will reproduce and pass on the beneficial genes to their offspring. This is also known as survival of the fittest. From the Darwin cloud, we see an arrow named mutation. Animal 1 has a mutation, and when we look at the DNA, we can see a change in the base pair. The second animal pictured is animal 2. Animal 2 has no mutation. There are also various evidences that prove the existence of evolution in nature. One such example is the DNA structure. Very related species have very similar DNA-based sequences. Aside from the sequences, organisms have been shown to have a common ancestor through similar embryo formation, as seen by Casper the Friendly Fish embryo. Fossils have also been used as proof of evolution as they show homologous structures. The disparities between contemporary organisms and their ancestors has occurred through various factors. Many species have two parents, each with distinct genetic material. The combination of each of these parents' gametes during fertilization ensures a new set of genes for the baby. Diversification of genes occurs even before fertilization. It is a matter of chance how each member of a homologous pair lines up during metaphase 1 and which daughter cell it goes to during anaphase 1. This phenomenon is known as independent assortment. In prophase 1 of meiosis, homologous chromosomes exchange genetic information in a process called synapse. This is crossing over. In a chromosome, a gene is expressed by an allele. Alleles come in either dominant P or recessive Q. In a population, the p-value is the frequency of the dominant alleles. Q is the frequency of the recessive allele. The sum of the p and q values is 1. The sums of p squared, which is the frequency of homozygous dominant individuals, 2pq, heterozygous individuals, and q squared, the frequency of homozygous recessive individuals, is 1. Populations following these are in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. However, there are certain conditions that need to be met. There can be no natural selection, and every individual has an equal chance of survival. There must be a large population. There can be no mutations. Random mating must occur, and there can be no migration of individuals. Allopatric speciation results from geographic separation. Sympatric speciation occurs without physical separation of the species. Natural selection occurs in many ways. It is usually expressed in graphs. The first graph is a graph of stabilizing selection. Which favors the mean trait. The second graph is of disruptive selection, which favors extremes. And the final graph is directional selection, which favors on one singular extreme. These forms of selection help in the speciation of animals. Nature has also devised various forms of reproductive isolation as a part of natural selection. Post-zygotic isolations, such as hybrid viability. In hybrid viability, the offspring of two different species will not be strong enough, both physically and genetically, to survive. In hybrid fertility, the offspring is infertile. In reduced fitness, the offspring of the original hybrid will not survive. Habitat isolation, which involves organisms being disrupted by nature, for example, mountains, rivers, land, water. Another one is temporal isolation. It stops organisms from mating due to the time the organisms experience sexual activity. The next is behavioral isolation, which stops organisms from mating with organisms that display abnormal behaviors. For example, fireflies only mate with fireflies that flicker. Mechanical isolation stops organisms with different anatomical parts from mating. Gametic isolation prevents gametes of different species from joining and fertilizing. There are many forms of evolution, though the two prevalent ones are convergent and divergent. Convergent evolution occurs when separate, unrelated species develop different adaptations to suit similar needs. They have analogous structures. An example would be the formation of wings on bugs and birds. Both are used to fly, yet have different structures. Divergent evolution is the accumulation of differences between groups, which can lead to the formation of new species. They have homologous structures. For example, the limb is used for flying, it's used as a flipper, and it's used for grasping.
Don't think about it.
No, I'm fine now.
You got you now. Just got.
I
Just getting
I
scratched.
don't have it. Wait, time. All right.
Seriously, like, Jesus, it's like with shoes. One pair doesn't work, so you gotta get another pair, and then they gotta go get another pair because the other pair doesn't work. They have 50 pairs of shoes, and then they're like, I don't like any of these shoes.